favorite NFL sideline reporter is now joining us live from, I believe, her house in Pittsburgh.
It is.
This is not in Carolina yet. What's up, Aditi?
She's America's favorite sideline reporter.
You know, wait, what was that, Jay?
I said she's America's favorite sideline reporter, not just our favorite.
I just went on the radio this morning and talked about how nervous I am.
About
the job, about all of it, about being on the NFL Today, about the sideline gig, on making sure I don't miss anything juicy that Baker does or does not do, but which does.
It's TV, whether you do it at the NFL Network or at CBS. You don't need to hear this from me. The moving parts of it don't change. It is what it is, and you're terrific at it. No. Nerves be damned. You're going to kill it, I guarantee you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right now I'm having angst over the fact that at 6 a.m. I got dressed in my running clothes, ready to go run. It's now noon. I still haven't gone out for my run. So do I just bag it? Or do I do it?
Running's never a good idea. So, yeah, you bag that immediately. Also, Aditi, are you wearing Panthers colors on our show right now?
She is.
It's true.
It's a Super Bowl hat.
Okay.
No, but I do. I have a problem. Okay, so have you guys seen the weather, the expected weather on Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah, so like, of course, I'm the queen of bad weather. I can never leave it. Even if I leave Cleveland, I'm still in bad weather. I have a problem. I have exactly 2 raincoats. Well, I have one that's an NFL Network one that obviously CBS doesn't want me to wear. But one is orange, and the other one is 2 shades of blue, which are the Panthers' 2 shades of blue.
So you have to go buy.
Sounds like you're going shopping.
Yeah, you're going shopping, not running.
I don't have time. That's what the problem is.
When's your flight?
I don't have time to go shopping.
I mean, CBS has got 8,000 CSI shows. Don't they have the money to buy you a jacket?
No, apparently my
America's
producer
most
did ask
watched
them,
network.
do we have CBS issued rain gear? And he was told no.
I mean, that's just terrible. Terrible job by CBS.
Yeah, they've got to do better.
Hey, we're not ripping my new employer before I
Hey, look. You got to catch them. They'll bull or get you.
Yeah,
Bad job
true.
out of them. Next thing you know.
I'm just saying, if you see me in one of those clear garbage bags, you'll know why. Because I was on this show.
What you should do is look up. Did you ever see the movie The Fisher King with Robin Williams?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He dressed up. He walks around the park with like a stickball bat and a garbage bag over him, and it's not clear. It's like a black garbage bag. I think that could be a new look. You could start a new style with that, maybe.
Maybe, but I try to not wear black on TV. It's like the black hair on the black. I just avoid it.
Yeah, you can get one when you land in Charlotte. I'm sure they've got stores there that have raincoats.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. If
you know what? I can confirm there's at least one store in Charlotte that sells raincoats.
And writing notes, and you should see all the notes I've taken on Baker Mayfield and
when are you
Baker
speaking
Mayfield
to him?
or Baker Mayfield.
When are you speaking to Baker? Are you speaking to him? Definitely.
Saturday, and I hope that I get to talk to him Sunday when he comes to the stadium.
His ass kicked? Oh no.
No, I mean when he, pregame talk to him.
What do you think? Like, if you could only ask him one question, what would you want to know from him right now?
Oh gosh, talk about putting a person on the spot.
I know. I'm sorry.
First of all, Aditi never asked just one question.
I know that, but if you only had one.
Let's be honest. I mean, when I was told I could only have 3 with Deshaun Watson, you know how many hours it took me to figure out what those 3 were? To winnow it down? I almost wonder if it might just be what I've already asked him, which he didn't have an answer for then. And I'll take you back to when the Browns were in Cincinnati last year. Sorry, Adam, I know, not a good feeling for you. But it was that Odell Beckham week. It was the week that Odell Beckham's father put out that video suggesting that his son was constantly open and Baker just never saw him. And then Odell was asked to stay home from the facility 2 days in a row, and the Browns ultimately decided to release him, grant him his release. And then obviously the Browns go into Cincinnati, who would eventually go on to the Super Bowl, but Cincinnati had been tremendous. In fact, that was one of only 2 losses I saw Cincinnati play in last year. I think I covered them 9 or 10 games, and they won every game except the Super Bowl, and that one against the Browns. Now, obviously, there was that very early pick 6 from Denzel Ward. That was there was the huge touchdown run by Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
But Baker also largely played a mistake-free, good, solid game. And after that game, I said to Baker, something along the lines of why he continues to get so up for these moments. Why does he continue to love having sort of this idea of the world against him? And why can't he just bottle that every week? Like, why is it? Most guys will tell you, and this is a conversation, I know you didn't like it, Adam, when I said this last week, but I said most guys are going to tell you, like, a quote in a locker room, a bulletin board quote, doesn't really do that much for them. You know, I just got off the phone with John Johnson, the Browns' great, brilliant safety, and he said no one even talked about the shirt. He's like, he saw Baker's shirt on Twitter, but, like, no one has brought it up. Mm-hmm. Not even to, like, laugh about it or roll their eyes or say Baker is being Baker. And that's just the Browns' personality coming off of Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, just really focused on the work. And Baker, this like goes back to high school when he played at a huge high school, and everybody that faced his team and on his team was recruited by a major school, and nobody offered him. And then he walks out of Texas Tech. Then he transfers to Oklahoma, and he takes it to Texas Tech twice when he faces them. Then Hue Jackson says whatever it is that Hue Jackson says and is jettisoned out of Cleveland. And what does Baker do the first time that he sees Hue Jackson across the sideline in Cincinnati? 22, 21 consecutive passes. I better look that up, right? Does anybody know off the top of their head?
You're right. It's in that. I think it is 22. He was on fire.
Yeah, and again, so it was like last year when he's in Cincinnati after Odell Beckham's dad, of all people, is going after Baker, and Baker comes out and leads his team to this great victory. What is it? And even now, the shirt, like that to me just shows that the guy can't ever shake it. Like he knows that he needs some sort of added edge or some sort of extra because, you know, it was the great Joe Thomas who made the point about the shirt. He can do whatever he wants to do, but he has worked so hard and so consciously this entire time that he's been in Carolina to show that he's matured and that he's not, you know, succumbing to this nonsense and he's not getting involved in all of the little extracurricular stuff. And then the day after he tries to downplay an exchange that he had with Cynthia Freeland, out comes this shirt. And he clearly loves having the target on his back. He clearly loves being the underdog. He clearly loves having people question or doubt him. And they're doubting why he would do this, why he would create this extra attention or this extra spotlight or this extra target. That's because that's who he is. And I would just love to know, like, why? Why isn't it enough to just go out there and want to beat the guy opposite you? Why isn't it enough to just want to go out and give it your best every single time? Why do you need an added insult to get up for the game? Like that piece, I don't know.
We need a psychologist to get to the bottom of that.
I don't think it's that fascinating a question.
I do. I do. I'd like to know that too. I'd like to know what's going on inside his brain.
And Aditi, that's why I think he'll never reach the levels that you expect a franchise quarterback to reach because he plays his best when he has those moments. What do you do in the other 13 games, the other 14 games? And
exactly.
And that's why I gave up on him midway through last year that they needed to move on.
You can't manufacture a slight every single
That's
day.
Exactly it.
And that's just
exactly
no way to live, right? So like that's the piece that I get it that sometimes, you know, I joke about this personally, and I think, Adam, I may have even told you this once a few years ago when we were talking about my own work situation. There are honey people and there are vinegar people. My mother, for instance, is a vinegar person. You tell her she can't do something and oh my gosh, she will run you over to prove you wrong. I don't really operate that way. I like honey. I like you telling me that I'm good and I work that much harder to prove you right. So I don't really understand why the guy needs vinegar. And obviously you can't get vinegar every single day. Like it just doesn't, I don't know. That piece is weird. And to your point, I think that is what's holding him back. I also wonder how different the offense really is. You know, he's trying to say that he's unleashed. He's trying to publicly talk about how Matt Rule gives him more freedom. He's taking kind of these subtle jabs at Kevin Stefanski last year being too conservative and chaining him up. And, you know, you guys were just talking about this. That might be chicken and egg. Was Kevin Stefanski conservative because of what Baker was capable of? Or is Baker saying that he was held back by a conservative Kevin Stefanski? I mean, I would argue the former rather than the latter. But really, I mean, it's not like the Browns are watching Oklahoma tape. It's not like Baker's
Right.
going to be suddenly playing schoolyard football. Go look at what Ben McAdoo. Why do I keep calling him Bob?
Yeah,
Look at
I
what
did
Ben
that the
He's
day
a
he was
terrible
hired,
head coach
Aditi.
and was ruining for the
Yeah,
Giants.
and I did that the day he was hired. They got my ear and said the Giants hired Ben McAdoo, and I called him
He's
Bob.
not worth remembering his first name.
But Aditi, to your point, last year I asked Trent Dilfer, does Kevin's system limit his quarterbacks, or does Kevin build his system around limited quarterbacks? And Trent basically said Baker tries to do too much. He tries to play like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and he's not those guys. Don't try and
Right.
save the play call. Just run what's in front of you. And I'll be curious
Yep.
to see moving forward this year. He could say whatever he wants about Kevin's system was bottling up or had him on the chain or whatever. He sucked last year. That's why the system was what
Right.
it was, because he couldn't complete a pass down the field. So I'll be curious to see. And we had the Panthers play-by-play guy on earlier, and I'm really anxious to see Carolina's offense and how much similarity there is to what Baker has run here, if any, or if it looks completely different.
And I mean, one would argue, right? Like, he did also take sort of a subtle jab saying, well, clearly they were always going to run first, or they believed in their run game. Well, by the way, the Panthers have Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey,
Right.
who they happen to think is one of
Get
the best
used to
backs in the game. And yeah, I mean, Baker has DJ Moore, sure, but in Cleveland, Baker also had Odell and Jarvis Landry. You know, like, so
Right.
I just, again, we'll see. I'm obviously excited just from a spectator's standpoint, from a journalist standpoint. We know that it's not going to be a vanilla game. We keep saying this, that there are such juicy add-ons. And as much as, like, sometimes you just want the game to be the game, you just want the football to be the football, and it's enough to talk about a beautiful sack or a beautiful spin move. It's always fun to have a little extra juice. So sure, you know, like, I'm eager to see who hugs Baker Mayfield first.
Uh-huh.
You know, when he gets out on the field, do people make a beeline for him? Does he actually walk over and say hi to guys before he starts warming up? What's his interaction with Kevin Stefanski like? You know, he said he was eager to get a hug from Nicholas Chubb. Does that actually happen? You know, I don't know. I'm curious about all of that.
Just as interesting will be Aditi at the end of the game, because a lot of times before the game, some players just
Right.
don't like to go anywhere near the opponent. They've got to keep
Sure.
their anger up. But after the game, I think it's going to be very telling how much time he spends on the field, who he talks to, who he doesn't talk to. We look at all of
Right.
that,
That's if he
whether
makes
it
it
means
to the end of
anything
the
or
game.
not.
And you know what, Jay? It's so interesting that you say that, because I was literally just thinking about this the other day. If I just lost a game, I don't know that I'd hang out for 10 minutes hugging guys
I
and
know I
laughing,
wouldn't.
exchanging jerseys. Like, I'm a bad loser.
I
I'd just
am
be like,
too.
"Okay, shake hands, see ya.
Yep,
Goodbye."
I'm out. I'm out.
Didi, if
Right.
Baker,
So
if Baker
in
loses,
football, there is that piece of it where guys can at least turn it off for a few minutes to be charming and smile and do all of that. What about that? You think anybody's going to ask Baker for his jersey?
well,
No.
I'll ask this:
Nicholas Chubb.
if Baker, if
You
that's
think
right,
Baker has
Chubb
to
might
ask
do
for his
that.
jersey?
If Baker loses this game, do you think he does shake hands? Will he say anything to anybody, or he walks off?
I don't know, because remember, what was the game last year where he refused to talk after the
Detroit.
game?
After
And
they
they
won.
won.
He
They
was
won. And he was still miserable.
Yeah.
I think he goes
But he
and
was
finds
booed
Nick
and he
Chubb.
wouldn't even talk to people. I don't know, but that just made me have a laugh. I'm going to ask Myles Garrett about that. If Myles Garrett completely dirties Baker Mayfield's jersey, like if it's just a mess of blood and grass and dirt, and
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's field turf or
What if
grass.
he knocks him
there,
out of the
whatever.
game?
Like, if it's got like stuff on it, is Myles going to ask Baker for his jersey after?
The jersey swap.
Nah,
I
they're
doubt
not gonna
that.
do that. They're not gonna
Would
do
Baker
that.
say, no.
What
Instead of the
decides-
tombstones for
Aditi-
Halloween, Myles Garrett could hang up jerseys.
I
Go
know
ahead,
that
sorry.
I know you've been immersed in this matchup all week. What decides it?
I think the Browns defense, quite frankly. I mean, I feel as if this defense is poised to be a number one, number two, number three, you know, don't put a number on it, but an elite amongst the best defense in the NFL. And I think, can they rattle Baker Mayfield? Can they get to him? Can they force him into making not great decisions? Can they come away with, you know, what they like to call splash plays, the takeaways? Reference John Johnson again. We were talking earlier about how much of a difference everybody being together in year 2 makes, and how last year there was a process. You had a young player like Greg Newsome, but you also just had communication. John Johnson was new. There were new pieces. There were 7 or 8 new starters a year ago. When was it that guys really started gelling? And he said it was a loss. It was that primetime game against the Ravens, but there were 4 takeaways. And it was like after that game, we knew that we could dictate things. And I feel like this is a team that could do that. Yeah. The Panthers are so high on Christian McCaffrey right now. Can they contain him in some way? He's supposedly in the best shape of his life, and he's supposedly been held back a little bit by the coaching staff, being protected from himself, essentially. So can they contain him? DJ Moore, who quietly is an elite receiver who's played with a whole parade of questionable quarterbacks. Ostensibly, he's got better quarterback play than he's had in his career. What does he do? Or can you kind of contain him? I don't know. I really do think that this game comes down. It's a very AFC North answer, but I think it comes down to the Browns defense.
Yeah, and I think just to follow up on that, Aditi, like the Browns on paper have one of, if not the best secondary in all of football. Their issue over the last couple of years, especially last year since adding Newsome, is they have a lot of injury-prone guys in their secondary, but everybody's healthy to start this season. And as good as DJ Moore is, and Robbie Anderson to some degree, I love the matchups for the Browns corners. And I think the secondary, which as you talked about John Johnson, and I didn't think John Johnson had a great first year with the Browns, and I'm expecting him to have a much better season this year. And I think with that secondary, I think Moore and Anderson are going to have a hard time coming open, at least right away. And that's where Myles Garrett could do his damage if they're trying to get the ball downfield. Because we know Baker tends to hold on to the ball longer to try to make something happen, and that's when he gets in trouble.
Right, and in Grant Delpit, you've got a guy that didn't necessarily start all of last year, but he played so much. And he and John Johnson have been communicating so much. I mean, even on the practice field, you listen, it's the chatter. It's the, if they're silent. I remember Jesse Bates telling me this with the Bengals, that if I'm not seeing the safeties talk, then they're in trouble. And so basically what Jesse was saying is that Jesse Bates and Von Bell need to be talking the whole time. And when you watch the Browns secondary, when you watch John Johnson and Grant Delpit, you see that constant communication. You also see that with the corners. And to your point about being hurt, they're so deep at corner now. You don't need anybody necessarily to play 60 snaps. You have guys you want to. I mean, you'd love to have Greg Newsome chase DJ Moore everywhere, including in the slot, or Denzel Ward, or, but if Greedy is healthy, he's serviceable too. And how about the rookie, MJ Emerson? He looked good. Again, I like that there are a number of bodies that can do different things, and Joe Woods can mix things up a little bit more this year because of that.
Yeah, I think, we're all concerned about the defensive tackle position. It's the one, it looks like the only weak spot on the defense. But they don't need those guys to be great. And they don't need them to get sacks. They just need to be stout in the middle and hold up there and be solid. Because the rest of the defense, I actually think I think JOK and Anthony Walker, in an age of the NFL where most teams are only using 2 linebackers most of the time, like those 2 guys are really good. JOK I think he's going to have a monster season. Their ends are awesome. They're deep. I mean, you're right. I think there's no reason with relative decent health why the Browns can't have the best defense in all of football as long as their defensive tackles are not awful. They just need to be adequate, and I think they're going to be great as a unit.
And to that point, we keep saying this. They're young and they're hungry and they're physical. And, up there, if there's one place where you can sort of get away or your physicality can ameliorate some of the youth, I think it's there. I think it's in the middle of a defense. I think it's playing that hard-nosed, push the line. Because remember, the Panthers have a new line too, a newly constructed line, which they hope is better, which they think is better, but they're playing together for the first time. I just don't know that we're going to see a ton of offensive fireworks. And maybe I'm totally wrong. I don't know. But I still think that the Browns would favor a methodical ball control the clock, move the ball, move the chains, don't constantly be gunning for the huge play. And I don't know that the Panthers are capable of being a constant quick strike, huge play offense. So that's why I'm saying I think it's really about the defense, about the Browns defense.
Aditi, so often you get a read from the players and how they're interacting and what their overall mood is through training camp, breaking camp, getting ready for the season. Do you get a sense that this Browns team feels internally that they're on the cusp of something very special? Or do you get a sense that they're looking around with no Deshaun Watson saying, how are we going to get this done? Are they leaning one way or the other for you?
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. It really is remarkable. You don't see that, the latter, at all. And again, it just has to be that the personality of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry just absolutely permeates this organization, this locker room, this team. And, these players have known from the time that Deshaun Watson was signed that they would be without him for some period of time. I don't know that 6 versus 11 versus 12 versus 9, I don't know how much those numbers matter that much to them psychologically. And I think the bigger thing here, guys, is that Jacoby Brissett is an easy guy to buy into, externally. And that's another thing. I was asked this on the radio this morning, why, the Browns are an underdog, or why people, when you look at their roster top to bottom, because look, let's be honest, this is one of the most veteran, best offensive lines in the league. This is most definitely the deepest, best running back room in the league. This is a room with 3 now very nice tight ends, 2 that do a really good job blocking and are reliable pass catchers, and Jesse James can catch the ball too. This is a team that, yes, outside of Amari Cooper, has some young, unknown wide receivers, but not horrible wide receivers. I mean, David Bell, nobody knew what Jamar Chase was going to be at this point of last year. And I'm not saying that David Bell is going to be Jamar Chase, but you got to let a young guy at least show us what he has. So the offense looks pretty good outside the quarterback position. And the defense, as you just said, no obvious glaring holes or question marks other than defensive tackle. So really, I think all the doubts about the Browns externally are generated about Jacoby Brissett. And yet internally, the guy is very clearly a leader. The guy is very clearly somebody whose demeanor brings people along. I mean, he's just got this very, very level sense of poise. He's a professional. He's done it at different places with different teammates. Bill Parcells is his mentor. I don't know. I just think that the players have a lot more faith in what Jacoby Brissett can do to move the ball and move the team than perhaps people externally do. And I think that Jacoby Brissett's got that confidence because he knows the Browns wanted him. The Browns came after him before they secured Deshaun Watson.
They did, yeah.
Aditi, final question before we get you out of here. Who is this game more important for, the Panthers or the Browns?
I'd argue the Browns, because I think the Browns have aspirations to show that they are a contender here. I mean, it's important to both. From supposedly Matt Rule's job is on the line, and he's got some job security questions. And obviously the Panthers won just 5 games a year ago. They're looking for a big leap. I actually just looked that up. In the last 2 years, 5 teams have improved their win total by at least 5 wins, and all of them had either a new head coach or a healthy quarterback. Or a new quarterback, or so either a new head coach or a new quarterback or a healthy quarterback. And so the Panthers have brought in a new quarterback. The hope is that they improve that 5-win total by at least 5. There is precedent for that. Baker Mayfield was responsible for actually doing the same thing in 2018. He was a new quarterback, and the Browns won more than 5 games than they'd won the previous year. But I still sort of think that much more is expected of the Browns, and a much bigger spotlight is on the Browns. Not only because of who's on their roster, but because of the Deshaun Watson trade. And so there's just more riding there, it feels like, than the Panthers. I don't know what's really expected of the Panthers.
Yeah, I think they probably have a sense they're playing with house money. And to your point, the Browns do have aspirations. And one thing that will sink aspirations in a hurry is losing on the road to a team that, at least internally, you feel like you should win. It's not a good way to start a season, and it's the whole 1-19-1 on opening week that is still hanging over your head. For a franchise to completely wash itself of a poor culture, one by one they have to eliminate things like that so they never have to hear about it again. And I remember the year the Bucs won the Super Bowl. They were 0 and forever when it was 32 degrees or colder at kickoff. And, we in the media loved that. When I was working in Tampa, that was like, oh, okay, here they go. They're going to Green Bay. It's going to be 30 degrees. We know what that means. They finally did it. And I remember, if you don't think it's a big deal, the players were celebrating the fact that they got that off their back. Yeah. And I think this is big for the Browns because they're done hearing about that stat. Even though most of them had nothing to do with it, they don't want to hear it.
2 points to that, Jay. So one, I actually just read this. Last year of the 14 playoff teams, 10 won in week 1. So there is something to be said for setting a tone and starting the season in a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not everything. The year that the Browns finally broke that playoff streak, they played an absolutely horrific week 1 game at the Ravens. So
you're right.
It's not everything, but it is like a nice trend. And then to your point, as much as a player will sit here and try to poo-poo a stat like that, like the one in, tell me again, the 1 in 21 and 1 or whatever, this idea, and Kevin Stefanski tried to say it was nothing, like, most of these guys are new to the team, or how many of these guys were even born, whatever. The truth is, the media brings it up. They get asked questions about it. Right. I will never forget the year that the Browns, I'm not going to share this one right now. I'm sorry. I'll wait until next week.
That's okay.
No, you know what's funny about this, Jay? Is like now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of my stories, and it's like, don't use your best material before Sunday.
Save it for kickoff. Save it for kickoff. And we'll all be watching to see what you decide. We'll all be watching to see what you decide on with the raincoat. I'm sure you'll knock it out of the park.
Unless I get lucky. Maybe you can all just say a prayer to the rain gods for me.
Well, you'll figure it out. I know you will. She's America's favorite sideline reporter, Aditi Kinkhabwala. Aditi, thank you. Have a great game. We can't wait to watch you in action on Sunday.
I'll see you down there.
Thank you so much.